Dr. Maya Jefferson stands frozen in the doorway of the hospital suite, watching 20 renowned physicians scramble around billionaire tech mogul Richard Davenport. His vital signs plummet on multiple screens. "Stop," she whispers the cleaning cart behind her. "You're killing him faster with that treatment." Before we dive into this shocking moment, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're intrigued by how a brilliant mind disguised as a housekeeper might save a dying billionaire, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overlooked heroes who change everything. Now let's rewind to see how Dr. Maya Jefferson ended up cleaning floors instead of saving lives. Dr. Maya Jefferson moves through the pristine halls of Davenport Medical Technologies with practiced invisibility, pushing her cleaning cart past executives who never meet her eyes. The irony isn't lost on her, that she cleans the very laboratories where she once led groundbreaking research. 3 years ago, she wore a white coat instead of a gray uniform, commanded respect instead of blank stares, and answered to Dr. Jefferson instead of, "Hey you," or simply nothing at all. Tonight, like every night, she works the late shift cleaning the executive floor where billionaire Richard Davenport keeps his private office and adjacent medical suite. The 62-year-old tech visionary and founder of DMT collapsed during a board meeting 4 days ago, triggering a medical response unprecedented in its scale and urgency. 20 specialists from around the world now rotate through his suite, their credentials impressive enough to fill a medical textbook's acknowledgments page. Maya overhears their hushed conversations as she empties trash bins and disinfects surfaces, cataloging symptoms in her mind. Progressive hair loss, peripheral neuropathy, causing stumbling and weakness, severe gastrointestinal distress, and rapidly declining cognitive function. Each day brings new theories from the assembled medical minds, from rare autoimmune conditions to aggressive brain tumors, each theory spawning increasingly invasive tests that seem to weaken Davenport further. Maya notices how the doctors speak over each other, competing rather than collaborating, each hoping to be the one who solves the billionaire puzzle and reaps the professional rewards. None of them notice when she lingers a moment too long near their discussions, or when her eyes track the lab results left carelessly on countertops. Tonight, something different catches her attention as she approaches Davenport's personal office. Voices filter through the partially open door, one belonging to Bradley Wells, Davenport's 30-something personal assistant, whose ambition radiates from him like cologne. The other voice belongs to Dr. Elizabeth Chambers, a striking woman with steel gray hair who serves as Davenport's personal physician. "The board is getting nervous about succession planning," Bradley says, his voice tight with concern that sounds rehearsed to Maya's ear. "If he doesn't improve soon, we need to consider activating the contingency protocols." Dr. Chambers responds with clinical detachment. "The latest treatment should show results within 48 hours. One way or another, we'll have clarity soon." Something in her tone sends a chill through Maya, reminding her of the day Chambers replaced Dr. Harrison James, the previous chief medical officer. Dr. James, a brilliant black physician who had mentored Maya, was unceremoniously fired after raising concerns about racial disparities in the company's drug trials. Maya remembers with painful clarity how Dr. Chambers had been the loudest voice questioning her credentials during her own demotion hearing, suggesting she wasn't a good cultural fit for leadership, despite her impeccable research record. The memory makes Maya's hand tighten on her cart handle as Bradley and Chambers lower their voices further. She continues past the office, making a mental note to return later when they've gone. 2 hours later, when the executive floor has emptied of all but security personnel doing their routine checks, Maya slips into Davenport's office under the pretense of detailed cleaning. The room speaks of wealth and power in its understated way, with original artwork and furnishings that cost more than her annual salary. On the polished desk, several medical journals lie open with pages marked by colorful tabs. Maya's scientific curiosity, never diminished, despite her circumstances, pulls her toward them. The journals contain articles about obscure toxins and their effects on the human nervous system. Nearby sits a crystal jar containing Davenport's signature hand cream, a luxury item created specifically for him by a boutique cosmetics company. The juxtaposition triggers something in Maya's memory, a lecture from her toxicology coursework at MIT about heavy metals and their absorption through the skin. The connection forms in her mind, tenuous but insistent. She discreetly photographs the journal pages with her phone before continuing her cleaning duties, thoughts racing behind her carefully neutral expression. As she exits the office, she passes a framed photograph of Davenport accepting an innovation award surrounded by his executive team. In the background, nearly cropped out of the image, stands Maya in her former lab coat, her research having contributed to the award-winning technology. The invisibility of her current position suddenly feels less like a burden and more like an unexpected advantage. No one watches the cleaning staff. No one suspects the woman with the mop might understand the complex medical discussions happening around her. No one imagines that the hands that sanitized doorknobs once manipulated molecules to create life-saving drugs. For the first time since her demotion, Maya feels a spark of her old scientific fire. If her suspicions are correct, all those prestigious doctors are looking in entirely the wrong direction, while Davenport's time runs dangerously short. Maya Jefferson remembers the precise moment she fell in love with chemistry, standing in her Baltimore middle school classroom, watching copper sulfate crystals form in supersaturated solution, blue geometry emerging from chaos like magic. The memory contrasts sharply with what followed her teacher's reaction when she declared she wanted to become a research scientist. Maybe aim for something more realistic, Miss. Winters had suggested glancing meaningfully at the predominantly white honors track students across the hall. Nursing is a fine profession. That pattern repeated throughout her education, teachers and counselors attempting to redirect her ambitions toward what they considered appropriate careers for a black girl from a working-class neighborhood. Her parents, a bus driver and a hospital administrator, recognized her brilliance and sacrificed everything to nurture it, working extra shifts to pay for science camps and advanced materials. When Maya earned a full scholarship to MIT, the local paper ran a small feature calling her success surprising and unexpected. At MIT, the questioning of her belonging became more sophisticated but no less painful. Professors routinely attributed her achievements to affirmative action rather than merit, expressing exaggerated surprise when she outperformed expectations. Dr. Date, May T2F and Ray, Elaine Whitmore, a biochemistry professor, whose research focused on drug delivery systems, took particular interest in undermining Maya's confidence. During a memorable lab presentation, Maya had proposed an innovative approach to targeted drug delivery. Dr. Whitmore had dismissed it as underdeveloped and lacking rigor. 2 weeks later, a white male student presented essentially the same concept and received effusive praise for his revolutionary thinking. Despite these obstacles, Maya graduated at the top of her class, her dissertation on novel drug delivery systems for cancer treatment earning recognition from leading pharmaceutical companies. Davenport Medical Technologies recruited her, aggressively promising research freedom and rapid advancement. The first year delivered on that promise with Maya, quickly establishing herself as a rising star in the research division. She developed methodologies that improved drug efficacy while reducing side effects, approaches that particularly benefited patients with certain genetic markers common in non-white populations. The problems began subtly. In meetings, her ideas were overlooked until restated by white colleagues. Research directions she proposed were questioned extensively, while less promising approaches from others received immediate approval. When she successfully developed a targeted treatment that showed particular promise for aggressive forms of breast cancer more common in black women, she arrived at work one morning to discover her project reassigned to Dr. Chambers' team without explanation. Maya had tried addressing these issues through proper channels. She scheduled meetings with department heads who repeatedly canceled. She filed reports with HR that disappeared into administrative black holes. She compiled data showing systematic bias in how research attributions were handled, only to be told she was being oversensitive and looking for problems. The final breaking point came when she identified troubling patterns in clinical trial data for DMT's flagship drug. The data showed disproportionate adverse effects in Black patients, suggesting a genetic interaction that the company's predominantly white test cohorts had masked. When Maya presented her findings in a research meeting, Dr. Chambers accused her of playing the race card to advance a personal agenda. Within 3 weeks, Maya was informed that a company restructuring had eliminated her position. She was offered a choice between termination with a restrictive non-disclosure agreement or reassignment to laboratory services, a euphemism for the cleaning and maintenance staff. With substantial student loans and her mother's medical bills to consider, Maya chose the only option that allowed her to keep health insurance. She watched her former colleagues avoid eye contact in hallways, their discomfort with her new role palpable. Some seemed to believe the company narrative that she had proven incompetent. Others clearly recognized the injustice, but feared similar retribution if they showed support. Now, as she sits in her tiny apartment after her shift, Maya reviews the photos she took of the journals in Davenport's office. The symptoms described in the toxicology articles align perfectly with what she's observed in the Billionaire's condition: hair loss, progressive neuropathy, gastrointestinal distress, cognitive decline. All classic signs of thallium poisoning, a heavy metal toxicity often missed because it mimics so many other conditions. Thallium had industrial applications in electronics manufacturing, a field where Davenport had made his initial fortune before expanding into medical technology. The poisoning would be especially difficult to detect if administered gradually, building up in the system over time, rather than causing acute symptoms. Maya pulls out her old toxicology textbooks hidden away in storage boxes that contain remnants of her previous life. She finds the relevant chapter and confirms her suspicions about absorption rates through skin contact. A luxury hand cream used daily would provide the perfect delivery mechanism for a slow, deliberate poisoning. No doctor would think to test for heavy metal toxicity without specific reason, especially not in a patient with Davenport's complex medical history. Maya realizes she faces an impossible dilemma. She possesses knowledge that could save Davenport's life, but revealing it would require explaining how a cleaning woman recognized symptoms that 20 elite specialists missed. It would mean admitting she had examined private medical information and conducted her own investigation without authorization. Moreover, it would mean helping the man whose company had systematically dismantled her career and dismissed critical safety concerns that could affect countless patients. As dawn breaks over the city, Maya makes her decision. Despite everything, she cannot stand by and watch a man die when she has the knowledge to save him. Her ethical commitment as a scientist and doctor remains intact, even if her title and position have been stripped away. She begins meticulously documenting her observations and research, preparing to find a way to intervene before Davenport's treatment team unwittingly pushes him beyond recovery. Maya begins methodically tracking patterns in Davenport's condition, noting that his symptoms consistently worsen after his morning routine, but show slight improvement during weekend hospital stays when he doesn't use his personal sate. Products. The correlation strengthens her suspicion about the hand cream serving as the delivery mechanism for thallium. After 3 days of careful observation, Maya makes a calculated risk during her night cleaning shift. With security cameras temporarily angled away during her regular maintenance of the executive suite, she extracts a small sample of Davenport's signature hand cream, transferring it to a sterile container she's brought, specifically for this purpose. The crystal jar on his desk appears untouched, her trained hands, having learned precision through years of laboratory work. Her apartment has become a makeshift laboratory, assembled from discarded equipment she salvaged during department cleanouts. A centrifuge with a cracked casing but functional motor. A spectrophotometer deemed obsolete when the company upgraded. Glassware with minor imperfections marked for disposal, but perfectly adequate for careful analysis. These cast-offs, like Maya herself, retain their value despite being discarded by those who failed to recognize their worth. Working through the night, Maya analyzes the hand cream sample employing techniques she once taught to graduate students. The results confirm her hypothesis. The cream contains significant traces of thallium, a toxic heavy metal that accumulates in the body over time. The concentration is carefully calibrated too low to cause immediate symptoms, but high enough to create progressive damage with daily use. This isn't accidental contamination, but deliberate poisoning designed to mimic natural illness while slowly destroying Davenport's nervous system. Have you ever wondered how many brilliant minds go unrecognized simply because they don't match someone's expectation of what brilliance looks like? Comment number 1. If you think talent should be judged solely on merit, rather than appearance or background. Hit like if you've ever had your abilities underestimated based on superficial judgments. Subscribe to join our community that believes in seeing beyond appearances to the capabilities within. Now, let's consider who would benefit from Davenport's slow deterioration and what secrets might be hiding in plain sight at Davenport Medical Technologies. Meanwhile, Maya's investigation doesn't go unnoticed. The next day, she finds security personnel following her through the building, their presence explained as routine monitoring but clearly targeted. Her locker shows signs of having been searched, contents rearranged, despite her careful organization. Bradley Wells begins appearing unexpectedly during her shifts, questioning why certain cleaning tasks take her so long in the executive areas. Most concerning is Dr. Chambers' sudden interest in the cleaning schedule, implementing new restrictions that limit Maya's access to areas containing medical information. These obstacles only strengthen Maya's determination. During her restricted cleaning rounds, she discovers that Davenport recently acquired a small biotech company founded by her former mentor, Dr. Harrison James. The company specialized in treatments developed specifically for conditions disproportionately affecting Black patients, addressing genetic variations often overlooked in mainstream pharmaceutical research. Records indicate that shortly after the acquisition, the research was shelved, patents buried in legal classification systems, and Dr. James himself was forced out. While dusting Davenport's extensive collection of professional photographs, Maya notices one that catches her attention. It shows a much younger Davenport accepting an award standing alongside Dr. Elaine Whitmore, her former professor from MIT. The photo dates back 20 years, suggesting a long-standing relationship she hadn't previously known about. This connection triggers new questions about the interconnected nature of her experiences. Maya attempts to contact Dr. James, hoping her former mentor might provide context for the abandoned research and possibly support her current investigation. Her calls go unanswered, leading her to search online for recent information. What she discovers sends a chill through her. 3 months ago, Dr. James died in what police ruled a suicide, though local news reports, quote, family members disputing this conclusion. After several days of careful messages, Loretta James, the doctor's widow, agrees to meet Maya at a small cafe far from the Davenport corporate headquarters. The woman who arrives walks with the careful movements of someone carrying immense grief, her eyes scanning the room with nervous energy before settling on Maya. Harrison spoke of you often, she says, after they exchange quiet greetings. He said you were the most brilliant researcher he'd ever mentored. Maya feels the weight of those words, the validation from her lost mentor landing on shoulders that have carried too much doubt for too long. Mrs. James, I don't believe your husband would have taken his own life, Maya says gently, and I think his death might be connected to something happening at Davenport Technologies now. Loretta's composure wavers, tears gathering before she masters herself. Neither do I. Harrison was preparing to file a whistleblower claim about research theft. He had documentation proving Davenport acquired our company specifically to bury treatments that would have helped thousands of people, mostly Black and brown patients with specific genetic markers. She opens her purse, hands trembling slightly as she removes a flash drive. He left this in our safety deposit box with instructions to retrieve it if anything happened to him. I haven't had the courage to look at it until now. Maya accepts the drive, understanding its significance. Why would Davenport bury research that could help people, that could be profitable? Harrison believed it threatened existing patents for less effective treatments, Loretta explains. Our targeted approaches would have made their blockbuster drugs obsolete for certain populations and required acknowledging that their previous clinical trials had failed to account for genetic diversity. As they part, Loretta grips Maya's hand tightly. Be careful. Harrison trusted the system to recognize truth and justice. That trust cost him everything. The warning echoes in Maya's mind as she returns to her apartment, adding the flash drive's contents to her growing body of evidence. The connections between Davenport Whitmore and the systematic suppression of research beneficial to minority populations suggest a pattern far larger than one billionaire's poisoning. Maya realizes she's stumbled onto something that reaches into the highest levels of pharmaceutical research, where profit margins and prejudice intertwine to determine whose health matters and whose suffering remains unaddressed. What she doesn't yet understand is why someone would target Davenport himself, the architect of this system, or how his current condition connects to the buried research and Dr. James's suspicious death. As she works through these questions, Maya remains unaware that her own apartment has been entered during her absence. Her careful notes photographed her makeshift lab equipment subtly disturbed. Someone knows she's investigating, and the clock is ticking not just for Richard Davenport, but for Maya herself. Maya creates a detailed timeline connecting Davenport's worsening symptoms with his daily routines, confirming that his condition deteriorates most rapidly after his morning regimen when he uses the thallium-laced hand cream. She meticulously documents the evidence of poisoning cross, referencing her findings with medical literature on heavy metal toxicity patterns. Working methodically despite her growing anxiety about surveillance, she begins investigating who might benefit from Davenport's incapacitation or death. The company's complex ownership structures require careful unraveling, but patterns emerge through publicly available financial disclosures and internal documents she accesses during her cleaning shifts. Dr. South. Elizabeth Chambers stands to inherit control of a major research division following Davenport's incapacitation, according to succession planning documents left carelessly visible during executive meetings. The division specializes in proprietary drug delivery systems, the same field where Maya's own research showed such promise before her demotion. More surprisingly, Bradley Wells, despite his seemingly junior position as personal assistant, holds substantial equity in the company through an intricate network of shell corporations. These holdings would increase significantly in value upon specific trigger events, including Davenport's death or mental incapacitation. The evidence suggests coordination between Chambers and Wells, possibly connected to the buried research that Dr. James had been preparing to expose before his death. Maya realizes that accessing Davenport's comprehensive medical records could provide crucial evidence connecting his symptoms to the poisoning timeline. Using an abandoned terminal during her night shift, she attempts to access the records through her old credentials, which remarkably still function in certain legacy systems despite her demotion. The attempt triggers security protocols she hadn't anticipated, sending automated alerts to system administrators. Maya barely manages to clear her access history and return to her cleaning duties before security personnel arrive to investigate the breach. The next day, Bradley Wells confronts her in an isolated corridor of the research wing, his typically polished demeanor replaced by barely controlled anger. "You're exceeding your job description, Jefferson," he says, deliberately dropping the respectful title she earned through years of education and achievement. Cleaning staff have no business in restricted areas after hours. When Maya attempts to explain she was simply performing her assigned duties, Wells steps closer, lowering his voice. "Let me be absolutely clear. Your continued employment here is hanging by a thread. One more unauthorized access attempt, one more instance of overstepping your position, and not only will you lose this job, but I'll personally ensure you never work in any research-adjacent field again." His threat continues, becoming more personal. "I understand you still have family in Baltimore. That neighborhood has such high crime rates. It would be a shame if your employment record suggested certain, shall we say, criminal tendencies that might warrant increased police attention in that area." Maya maintains her composure, years of facing microaggressions, having taught her the dangerous consequences of displaying anger as a black woman in professional settings. "Are you threatening my family, Mr. Wells?" Wells smiles, stepping back to a professional distance as a group of researchers approaches from a connecting hallway. "I'm simply expressing concern for company security protocols and your continued employment, Miss Jefferson. Nothing more." He walks away, but the message is unmistakable. When Maya reviews security footage of the encounter, later accessing the system through maintenance protocols, she discovers a 17-minute gap in the recording, the cameras having mysteriously malfunctioned during their exchange. With her direct access to information increasingly restricted, Maya reaches out to Dr. Aisha Washington, a former colleague who had supported her concerns about clinical trial bias before being pushed into resigning. Unlike others who had distanced themselves from Maya after her demotion, Aisha had maintained occasional contact, though their communication remained cautious due to non-disclosure agreements. They meet at a free health clinic in a predominantly black neighborhood where Aisha now works, providing care to underserved patients while conducting independent research with limited resources. "I've been waiting for this," Aisha says after Maya explains her suspicions about Davenport's poisoning. "The pattern at DMT has been consistent for years. Any research that might particularly benefit non-white populations gets acquired and buried. Any researcher who pushes too hard for inclusive clinical trials gets pushed out or worse." She confirms Maya's findings, adding critical information about specialized testing that could definitively detect thallium poisoning, even at low concentrations tests that wouldn't be included in standard toxicology panels. "The system is designed to make voices like ours seem paranoid," Aisha says as they part, "but documenting patterns makes coincidences harder to dismiss." Maya's investigation reveals multiple cases similar to her own and Dr. James's, where promising black scientists developed treatments addressing conditions affecting minority populations only to have their research acquired and buried by Davenport's company. The pattern constitutes intellectual theft, targeting minority researchers while simultaneously denying potentially life-saving treatments to vulnerable populations. As Maya compiles this evidence, Davenport's condition reaches a critical stage. Through conversations overheard during her cleaning shifts, she learns the medical team plans to implement experimental treatments involving powerful immunosuppressants combined with neurological stimulants. Maya recognizes immediately that these treatments would catastrophically interact with the thallium in Davenport's system, likely causing complete organ failure. The timeline suddenly compresses from days to hours. Maya must find a way to intervene despite her compromised position and the active efforts to remove her from access to information. Every institutional path seems blocked, every potential ally either compromised or removed. She weighs her options, calculating risks against the certainty of Davenport's death if she fails to act. Despite her complicated feelings about the man whose company destroyed her career, her medical oath and ethical commitment remain unwavering. She prepares to take action, knowing it will likely cost her job and possibly much more, but seeing no alternative that doesn't result in preventable death. What she doesn't yet realize is that Davenport himself may have been investigating the same patterns she's uncovered, potentially explaining why he became a target in the first place. Maya decides to approach Dr. Michael Richardson, the only physician on Davenport's treatment team, who occasionally acknowledges her presence, even if just with brief nods in hallways. Unlike his colleagues who look through her as if she's invisible, Richardson at least demonstrates basic courtesy. She prepares a concise presentation of her findings, organizing evidence of the thallium poisoning, along with the specific contraindications for the planned treatment. Catching him alone in the doctor's lounge during her cleaning rotation, Maya seizes her opportunity. "Dr. Richardson, I need 5 minutes of your time regarding Mr. Davenport's condition." Richardson looks up from his tablet, surprise evident in his expression that someone in a cleaning uniform would address him directly about a patient. "I'm sorry, I believe Mr. Davenport is suffering from thallium poisoning administered through his personal hand cream. The treatment protocol scheduled for tomorrow will interact catastrophically with the heavy metal accumulation in his system." Maya offers her carefully prepared folder containing test results and medical literature. Richardson's expression shifts from surprise to condescension. "And you've determined this? How exactly, during your extensive medical training between mopping floors, his dismissive tone carries the weight of institutional arrogance? Maya stands straighter, professional dignity surfacing despite her uniform. I'm Dr. Maya Jefferson. I hold a PhD in biochemistry from MIT and completed medical training at Johns Hopkins before joining Davenport Technologies as a senior researcher. My current position doesn't negate my qualifications or the validity of these findings. Richardson's face registers momentary confusion before hardening. If you were actually qualified as you claim, you wouldn't be cleaning laboratories. I suggest you focus on doing your job properly rather than playing doctor with information you shouldn't have access to. When Maya persists explaining the urgency of the situation and the specific toxic interactions that would occur with the planned treatment, Richardson signals to security personnel lingering near the doorway. This woman is disrupting medical staff and accessing confidential patient information. Please escort her from the building. The security officers, men who have passed her countless times without recognition, now focus on her with uncomfortable intensity. Your keycard access is suspended pending review, one informs her as they march her toward the exit. Building security has been notified not to admit you until further notice. Outside the building, standing on the sidewalk in her cleaning uniform, as late afternoon traffic rushes past Maya, feels the full weight of institutional power aligned against her. Her evidence remains unexamined, her expertise dismissed because of her position rather than its merit. With direct institutional channels blocked, Maya identifies a potential alternative route to intervention. Richard Davenport has an estranged daughter, Sophia, whose social media presence reveals a commitment to social justice causes and public criticism of her father's business practices. Located through publicly available information, Sophia initially responds to Maya's outreach with understandable suspicion. I get dozens of messages from people claiming to have urgent information about my father, she writes back. Usually they're looking for money or media attention. Maya's response is direct. I don't want money or publicity. I want to prevent a medical catastrophe that will kill your father within 48 hours. I have evidence of deliberate poisoning that his medical team is missing. She includes enough technical details about thallium toxicity and drug interactions to demonstrate genuine expertise. After several tense exchanges, Sophia agrees to meet at a public library where they can speak privately while remaining in a secure environment. Sophia Davenport arrives dressed casually in jeans and a worn sweater, her resemblance to her father visible in her sharp gaze and analytical expression. Where Richard projects power through expensive tailoring and practiced authority, Sophia's presence carries the quiet intensity of someone committed to systemic change rather than personal advancement. Show me everything, she says without preamble, and Maya does. The evidence is compelling enough that Sophia's initial skepticism transforms into urgent concern. We need to go through official channels first, Sophia insists. If what you're showing me is accurate, we need to stop tomorrow's treatment immediately. Together, they attempt to reach Davenport's medical team through properly documented communications. Sophia, using her legal standing as family to request urgent consultation regarding new medical information. Their efforts meet coordinated resistance. Bradley Wells intercepts their messages, responding that all medical information should be directed through proper channels, specifically Dr. H. Chambers, who then characterizes their concerns as unfounded speculation from disgruntled individuals seeking to disrupt critical care. When they attempt to visit Davenport directly at the hospital where he's been transferred for the planned procedure, hospital security, clearly briefed in advance, prevents their entry. The confrontation escalates when security personnel physically block Maya while maintaining professional courtesy toward Sophia, a racial disparity in treatment that doesn't go unnoticed by patients and visitors in the lobby. Take your hands off her, Sophia demands, when a guard grips Maya's arm with unnecessary force. She's a physician with critical information about my father's condition. The guard maintains his hold. We have instructions regarding this individual. She's been barred from Davenport Medical Facilities. The commotion attracts attention, with several bystanders recording the interaction on phones. One video, capturing the guard's aggressive handling of Maya contrasted with respectful treatment of Sophia, goes viral within hours, framed with the caption, "Black doctor physically removed from hospital while trying to save patient." The racial dynamics of the incident spark immediate controversy, with social media rapidly dividing along predictable lines. Some recognize the systemic racism at play, while others question Maya's credentials and motives, suggesting she's seeking attention or has a vendetta against Davenport. Maya faces immediate public scrutiny, with internet sleuths digging into her background, finding her demotion at Davenport Technologies, and spinning narratives about incompetence or professional jealousy. Former colleagues receive media inquiries, but distance themselves, unwilling to risk their own positions by defending her. Online harassment escalates to personal threats, with anonymous accounts posting her address and suggesting she be taught a lesson about staying in her place. Even her landlord, pressured by other tenants concerned about the controversy, serves an eviction notice citing a clause about disruptive behavior affecting community harmony. Throughout this mounting personal crisis, Maya remains focused on preventing the catastrophic treatment scheduled for the following morning. The online controversy creates noise, but no meaningful intervention. Institutional barriers remain firmly in place, with medical authorities closing ranks around their treatment plan and security protocols specifically designed to keep Maya away from Davenport. Despite everything Davenport represents, everything his company did to destroy her career, and bury research that could have helped countless patients who look like her, Maya cannot abandon her commitment to preserving life. The ethical framework that guided her through years of research and medical training doesn't allow for selective application based on personal feelings about the patient. As night falls, Maya and Sophia regroup in Sophia's apartment, the irony not lost on either of them that the daughter of one of the world's wealthiest men lives in a modest two-bedroom walk-up devoted primarily to housing her extensive library and rescue cats. They review their options, the clock ticking relentlessly toward morning, when the treatment that will kill Richard Davenport is scheduled to begin. Maya works through the night in Sophia's apartment, refining her evidence and developing a potential antidote protocol. She draws on her extensive knowledge of chelation therapy, which uses compounds that bind to heavy metals and remove them from the body. Most standard chelating agents would interact dangerously with Davenport's current medications, but Maya remembers something from her grandmother's traditional remedies. Growing up, her grandmother had maintained connections to West African healing traditions, including specific compounds used to treat metal poisoning from contaminated water sources. Maya researches these traditional ingredients using Sophia's laptop, finding modern scientific validation for their effectiveness in binding thallium without the dangerous interactions of conventional treatments. The solution's been there all along, Maya explains to Sophia, who watches her work with growing respect. Indigenous and traditional knowledge systems have addressed problems like heavy metal poisoning for centuries, but medical establishments dismiss them as unscientific until Western researchers validate the same approaches. Through contacts at the community health center where Aisha works, they secure the necessary compounds to develop an emergency chelation formula that could stabilize Davenport long enough for conventional treatments to become viable. Dawn approaches with news that Davenport's condition has deteriorated further. A text from a sympathetic nurse on his care team confirms the medical staff plans to proceed with the high-risk procedure within hours. Have you ever faced a moment when doing the right thing meant risking everything you've worked for? Comment number 1. If you believe principles should outweigh personal safety when someone's life hangs in the balance. Like this video if you've ever had to stand up against powerful opposition to defend what you know is true. Subscribe to join our community that values courage and integrity in the face of injustice. Now watch how Maya navigates impossible choices when every institutional door has been slammed in her face. Sophia uses her father's private security codes, still active despite their estrangement, to help Maya enter the hospital through service entrances used by catering staff. Dressed in borrowed food service uniforms, they navigate through kitchen areas and service corridors, avoiding main hallways where Maya might be recognized. As they move through the building, they overhear Bradley Wells speaking with Dr. Chambers in a consultation room, the door not fully closed. We need to accelerate the transition timeline, Wells says, his voice tense with urgency. The board is getting nervous about continuity, and we can't risk anyone else getting involved before we secure the research archives. The procedure this morning should resolve the timeline, concerns Chambers responds coolly. Once it's complete, we'll have 90 days under the incapacitation clauses in the corporate charter to implement the complete restructuring plan. And the James research, the other projects in containment, already being processed for permanent archiving. No one will connect those dots once everything's complete. The conversation confirms Maya's worst suspicions. Davenport's poisoning isn't just about corporate succession, but part of a larger scheme to permanently bury research that could help countless patients, particularly those from minority populations disproportionately affected by conditions the buried treatments address. Maya faces an excruciating moral dilemma. Richard Davenport represents everything about the medical establishment that has dismissed and devalued her work and the health concerns of people who look like her. His company systematically destroyed the careers of black researchers and suppressed treatments that could have saved lives in communities like the one where she grew up. Every instinct for justice argues for letting events unfold, for allowing the system Davenport created to consume its architect. Yet her commitment to healing transcends personal grievance. Allowing Davenport to die would mean victory for Chambers and Wells, enabling them to continue and even accelerate the burial of life-saving research. It would mean Dr. James died in vain, and countless patients would never access treatments developed specifically for their needs. Maya's ethical framework won't permit that outcome, regardless of her feelings about Davenport himself. "We need to get to the research lab first," she tells Sophia, modifying their plan. "I need to finalize the chelation formula before we can safely intervene in the procedure." They navigate to the research wing using Sophia's access codes to enter restricted areas. The laboratory feels like returning home for Maya, muscle memory, guiding her hands to equipment and materials, even as her heart races with the knowledge that they have minimal time before security discovers their presence. Working with practiced efficiency, Maya prepares the chelation formula, combining traditional compounds with modern delivery mechanisms. The result is a clear solution that, when administered intravenously, should bind to the accumulated thallium and facilitate its removal through natural excretion pathways. The process would be gradual enough to prevent shock to already stressed systems while halting further damage. As Maya secures the completed formula in a medical transport container, alarms begin sounding throughout the research wing. Unauthorized access detected in Restricted Zone B, an automated voice announces over intercoms. Security personnel proceed to containment positions. "They've detected us," Sophia says, unnecessarily, her face tight with tension. "We need to move now." They exit the laboratory into corridors already filling with security personnel. Splitting up as planned, Sophia creates a diversion by heading toward administrative offices, drawing security attention, while Maya takes a service elevator toward the medical floor where Davenport awaits his potentially fatal procedure. Reaching the medical wing, Maya encounters the most difficult segment of their improvised plan. She must reach Davenport's room during the brief window of a shift change, when temporary confusion about personnel responsibilities might allow her to slip past monitoring systems. Watching from an alcove, Maya sees her opportunity when nurses from the night shift exit Davenport's room, passing charting information to day shift staff in the corridor rather than at bedside. The momentary gap in direct patient observation gives her exactly 23 seconds to enter undetected. Inside the private suite, Maya finds Davenport barely recognizable from the powerful figure she remembers. His robust frame has withered hair, fallen out in patches, skin bearing the distinctive mottling associated with advanced thallium poisoning. Monitoring equipment displays deteriorating vital signs, his body failing system by system. Dr. Chambers stands at his bedside, reviewing final preparations for the procedure with two assisting physicians. Chambers looks up, momentary confusion crossing her features before recognition dawns. "What are you doing here?" Security Maya doesn't wait for the inevitable response, stepping forward with professional authority despite her food service disguise. "You're about to kill him," she states clearly, addressing the assisting physicians rather than Chambers. "His symptoms indicate thallium poisoning, and the immunosuppressants you're preparing to administer will accelerate multiple organ failure when combined with heavy metal toxicity." Chambers moves to block her. "This woman is delusional and has been barred from this facility. Remove her immediately." One of the assisting physicians, however, hesitates. "Thallium poisoning. That would explain the peripheral neuropathy pattern we've been seeing." Maya seizes the opening quickly, presenting her evidence demonstrating how the symptom progression perfectly matches thallium toxicity rather than autoimmune response. She explains the specific biochemical pathway through which the planned treatment would interact catastrophically with accumulated thallium. "Test his hair and nail samples for heavy metal concentration," she urges. Standard blood tests often miss chronic exposure, but keratin tissues will show the accumulation pattern. The confrontation escalates as security personnel arrive responding to Chambers' call. The momentum shifts unexpectedly when Dr. Richardson, entering for pre-procedure consultation, recognizes Maya from their previous interaction. "You're the cleaning staff member who approached me yesterday," he says, genuine confusion in his voice. "You actually are a doctor." "Dr. Maya Jefferson, biochemistry and toxicology specialist," she confirms. "I've brought a chelation formula that can safely bind the thallium while allowing his systems to recover naturally." What follows is a rapid exchange of medical information, with Maya demonstrating expertise that cannot be dismissed despite her current position. The evidence becomes increasingly difficult to ignore as she methodically addresses each aspect of Davenport's condition, explaining how conventional treatments have unwittingly exacerbated the poisoning effects. Richardson, to his credit, begins asking substantive questions rather than dismissing her outright. "If what you're saying is accurate, we need immediate confirmation testing." He finally states, overriding Chambers' increasingly desperate objections. "And we absolutely cannot proceed with the planned protocol until we've ruled this out." The dynamic in the room has fundamentally shifted. Maya stands at the center of medical authority not because of position or title, but through demonstrated expertise and the irrefutable logic of her analysis. Security personnel, uncertain how to proceed with conflicting instructions from medical staff, maintain positions at the door without intervening further. As Richardson orders the testing, Maya recommended Chambers makes a desperate move, lunging toward the medication prepared for Davenport's treatment. "We don't have time for additional testing," she insists. "His condition requires immediate intervention with the approved protocol." Maya intercepts her, physically preventing administration of the medication that would prove fatal given the thallium poisoning. The confrontation becomes physical, with Chambers struggling against Maya's restraining grip. Security finally moves in, separating both women and restraining them as the situation devolves into chaos. In the struggle, the vial containing Maya's carefully prepared chelation formula falls to the floor, shattering and rendering the potential antidote unusable. Maya watches the clear solution spread across polished hospital floors, their best hope for immediate intervention lost in the confrontation. Maya stands in the hospital's research pharmacy, directing the medical team now working frantically to recreate her chelation formula. Preliminary tests have confirmed thallium poisoning, validating her diagnosis and creating a rush to develop effective treatment before Davenport's organs fail completely. The institutional resistance she faced has transformed into desperate reliance on her expertise, though the contradiction goes unremarked upon by the physicians now following her instructions. "The binding agent needs precise pH calibration," she explains, maintaining professional focus despite the irony of directing doctors who would have ignored her completely just hours earlier. "Too alkaline, and it won't properly chelate the thallium. Too acidic, and it risks further organ damage given his compromised kidney function." The head pharmacist, a middle-aged Asian woman named Dr. Lin, works alongside Maya with efficient respect. "Your knowledge of traditional compounds is remarkable," she comments, while measuring precise amounts of the binding agents. "Western medical education rarely includes these traditional pharmacological approaches." "My grandmother was from Senegal," Maya explains, carefully monitoring solution development. She maintained connections to traditional healers and their knowledge systems. I incorporated their approaches into my research at MIT, though my professors often dismissed these sources as anecdotal rather than scientific. The pharmaceutical team works with increasing urgency as updates from Davenport's room indicate further deterioration. Hospital administration, now aware of the confirmed poisoning, has contacted law enforcement, who arrive to investigate even as medical intervention continues. Maya notes the stark contrast in how police interact with different suspects. Bradley Wells, clearly implicated in the poisoning conspiracy, receives professional courtesy from detectives interviewed in comfortable conference rooms with his attorney present. Maya, despite being the whistleblower who identified the poisoning faces, interrogation-style questioning about how she accessed medical information and entered restricted areas. The racial dynamics remain unmistakable even in crisis. The disparate treatment continues until Sophia Davenport intervenes, leveraging family authority and privilege to shift the investigative focus. "The woman who saved my father's life is being treated like a suspect," she tells the lead detective pointedly. Meanwhile, those who poisoned him are being treated with deference. "I've already contacted my attorneys and several civil rights organizations who are very interested in documenting this pattern." Her intervention creates sufficient space for Maya to complete the chelation formula without further police interference. News of the poisoning leaks to the press despite hospital attempts to control information, creating a media frenzy outside the medical center. Camera crews position themselves at entrances, while social media erupts with competing narratives. Some outlets portray Maya as a heroic whistleblower who overcame systemic barriers to save a life. Others question her motives, suggesting opportunism or revenge against Davenport Technologies for her demotion. Commentators debate her actions with clear racial undertones, questioning her qualifications despite her impeccable credentials, suggesting she must have missed something that would explain her career trajectory. The newly synthesized chelation treatment is administered to Davenport, who begins showing signs of stabilization within hours. The immediate crisis passes, though full recovery will require extended treatment and rehabilitation. As the billionaire's condition improves, Maya gains access to his personal files through Sophia discovering documentation that reshapes her understanding of recent events. Richard Davenport had been conducting his own investigation into research suppression within his company. Personal notes detail his growing concern about patterns of discrimination and intellectual theft targeting minority researchers. He had uncovered evidence of Dr. James's research being deliberately buried and had begun questioning the circumstances surrounding his death, which Davenport's notes explicitly suggest was not suicide. Most significantly, Davenport had identified Maya's own case as particularly egregious, noting that her demotion occurred immediately after she identified racial disparities in drug trial outcomes that could have led to major liability issues for the company. His notes indicate plans for a complete reorganization of research divisions, with specific mention of reinstating Maya to a senior position overseeing a new health equity initiative. The documentation explains why Davenport became a target. Chambers and Wells, along with other executives implicated in the research suppression scheme, stood to lose everything if Davenport implemented his planned reorganization. The poisoning was their desperate attempt to seize control before their actions were exposed. Bradley's attempt to flee is thwarted when financial investigators uncover offshore accounts structured to receive substantial funds triggered by specific events, including Davenport's death or incapacitation. The evidence creates an irrefutable paper trail connecting him to the poisoning conspiracy. As Davenport continues recovering, the full scope of the conspiracy unravels. Multiple executives are implicated in systematic discrimination and intellectual theft targeting minority researchers. Internal communications reveal explicit strategies for acquiring promising research developed by black scientists, then burying it when it threatened more profitable existing products or suggested racial disparities in treatment outcomes. The corporation faces not only criminal investigations, but substantial civil liability from researchers whose work was stolen and careers destroyed. Through it all, Maya maintains professional focus, consulting on Davenport's treatment while providing evidence to investigators building cases against those responsible for the poisoning and research suppression. She navigates the sudden shift from invisibility to hypervisibility, with careful dignity, aware that public attention carries its own dangers for a black woman suddenly thrust into national spotlight. When a reporter ambushes her outside the hospital, asking if she feels vindicated by recent events, Maya responds with characteristic thoughtfulness. "This isn't about personal vindication," she says. "It's about systems that devalue certain voices and the life-saving innovations they might offer. The real tragedy isn't what happened to my career, but the treatments that never reached patients who needed them because of these practices." The statement broadcast nationally resonates widely, sparking renewed conversation about structural barriers in medical research and pharmaceutical development. As criminal cases proceed against those involved in the poisoning and research suppression, Maya receives an unexpected message from Richard Davenport, now conscious and recovering his cognitive function. He requests a private meeting away from the institutional setting that defined their previous interactions. After careful consideration, Maya agrees, curious about what the billionaire might say, now that he understands she saved his life, despite everything his company had done to destroy her career. The meeting with Richard Davenport takes place in a private hospital garden, away from the monitoring equipment and medical personnel that have defined his existence for weeks. Though still gaunt from his ordeal, he carries himself with the practiced authority of someone accustomed to wielding power. Maya sits across from him, maintaining professional composure despite the complexity of emotions this confrontation evokes. Dr. Jefferson, he begins using her earned title for the first time in their acquaintance. "I understand I owe you my life." "You do," Maya confirms, seeing no reason for false modesty. The thallium poisoning would have been fatal within days, particularly with the treatment protocol they planned to administer. Davenport nods, studying her with the analytical gaze that built his technology empire. "What I don't fully understand is why you intervened. Given what my company did to your career, many would have considered it justice to let events unfold naturally." The question cuts to the heart of ethical complexity Maya has wrestled with throughout this ordeal. "I didn't save you for your benefit," she answers candidly. "I did it because allowing you to die would have given Chambers and Wells exactly what they wanted: control of research that could help countless people. Your death would have buried Dr. James' work permanently, along with treatments specifically designed for populations that medical research routinely overlooks." She meets his gaze directly. "My obligation as a scientist and physician doesn't change based on my feelings about the patient." Davenport absorbs this, something like respect flickering across his features. "Fair enough. Then perhaps we can discuss how to ensure those treatments reach the people who need them." Their conversation shifts to the future of Davenport Medical Technologies, with the billionaire outlining plans for a complete restructuring focused on research integrity and inclusive development practices. At the center of this vision, he proposes establishing a new division focused specifically on health equity, with Maya as director, giving her authority to recover buried research and ensure proper attribution to original scientists. The offer represents professional redemption and resource access beyond anything Maya has dared imagine since her demotion. It also presents profound ethical questions about working within a system she knows to be fundamentally flawed, even with promises of reform. Before she can formulate a response, their meeting is interrupted by Sophia entering the garden with urgent news. "The board is moving to have you declared temporarily incapacitated." She informs her father, tablet in hand, displaying legal documents. "They're citing cognitive impairment from your illness to trigger emergency succession protocols. If they succeed, all your planned changes will be blocked until they've consolidated control." The news transforms their theoretical discussion into immediate crisis. Despite his improving condition, Davenport remains legally vulnerable during recovery. The corporate bylaws he himself established contain provisions that could be weaponized against him by executives, desperate to maintain existing power structures. "How long do we have?" Maya asks, already calculating potential responses. "The emergency board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning," Sophia answers. "They're moving quickly. while father's official medical status still shows cognitive impairment. Davenport attempts to stand medical weakness, betraying his mental determination. I need to demonstrate sufficient recovery to invalidate their claims. My personal physician needs to update my status immediately. Dr. Chambers was your physician of record, Maya reminds him. She's currently in custody, but her medical assessment from before her arrest still stands officially. Getting that overturned through proper channels would take days we don't have. What follows is a race against corporate machinery, designed specifically to function without the inconvenience of individual intervention, even from its founder. Maya coordinates with Davenport's new medical team to accelerate cognitive testing and documentation of his recovery, while Sophia leverages legal connections to challenge the emergency board provisions. Through connections established during her investigation, Maya contacts journalists who have covered the poisoning story, ensuring public attention will complicate any attempt to quietly seize corporate control while Davenport recovers. The strategy creates sufficient obstacles that several board members uncomfortable with public scrutiny begin questioning the emergency provisions. The pivotal moment comes when Maya discovers documentation in Davenport's personal files revealing that certain board members were directly implicated in the research suppression schemes. The evidence suggests knowledge of discriminatory practices extending far beyond Chambers and Wells, potentially creating personal liability for those involved. This leverage proves sufficient to force postponement of the emergency board meeting, creating the time needed for Davenport to officially reassert control. As this corporate drama unfolds, Maya simultaneously coordinates with researchers at community health centers to implement preliminary trials of treatments developed by Dr. James's team before being suppressed. Working with Dr. Aisha Washington, she establishes protocols to demonstrate efficacy, while building documentation necessary for eventual FDA approval. The work continues around the clock, with Maya navigating between hospital responsibilities, corporate machinations, and community implementation. Her expertise finally receiving the recognition and resources it deserves. Throughout this period, law enforcement investigations expand beyond the immediate poisoning case to examine patterns of research, suppression, and intellectual theft. Maya provides crucial testimony, connecting individual cases into documented patterns of discrimination and market manipulation. Her detailed knowledge of both specific research projects and institutional practices makes her an invaluable witness, though this role further complicates her position within Davenport Technologies. Some executives view her as a dangerous whistleblower, undermining company interests, while others recognize the opportunity for meaningful reform under her guidance. These tensions create an environment where Maya must constantly navigate professional challenges while maintaining focus on the ultimate goal of bringing suppressed treatments to patients who need them. A memorial service for Dr. Harrison James provides unexpected resolution to several lingering questions. Attended by former colleagues and community members whose health concerns his research addressed, the service becomes a catalyst for collective recognition of systemic injustices in medical research. Maya delivers a eulogy honoring her mentor's commitment to inclusive medical innovation, connecting his work to broader struggles for equity in healthcare delivery. Dr. James understood that medical advancement means nothing if it doesn't reach those who need it most, she tells the assembled mourners. He recognized that different genetic backgrounds, different lived experiences, different cultural contexts all impact how we experience disease and respond to treatment. His brilliance lay not just in his scientific mind, but in his refusal to accept that certain lives could be considered statistically insignificant. Following the service, Loretta James approaches Maya with additional files her husband had secured before his death, providing the final pieces of evidence connecting individual cases of research suppression into a comprehensive pattern of discrimination. These materials, combined with Maya's existing documentation, create an irrefutable case for systematic reform within Davenport Technologies and potentially the broader pharmaceutical industry. As criminal proceedings advance against those directly involved in the poisoning conspiracy, Maya finds herself increasingly pulled between multiple demanding roles: medical consultant to Davenport's ongoing recovery witness in criminal investigations, potential research director in a reformed corporate structure, and advocate for patients whose needs have been systematically overlooked. Each role represents a different facet of justice requiring different skills and compromises. The question becomes not whether she can succeed in these roles, but whether any institutional structure, even reformed, can truly deliver the equitable health care her community deserves. 6 months after the poisoning conspiracy unraveled, Maya sits in the executive office once occupied by Richard Davenport, now transformed into the headquarters of the Health Equity Research Division. The walls previously adorned with corporate awards and financial milestones now display community health data and research timelines for treatments addressing conditions disproportionately affecting minority populations. The symbolic transformation reflects broader structural changes throughout Davenport Medical Technologies, now operating under oversight protocols established, following criminal investigations into research suppression practices. Maya's appointment as division director came with unprecedented autonomy and resource allocation, enabling her to recover buried research and ensure proper attribution to original scientists. The transition hasn't been without significant challenges. Many executives resent her elevation, viewing her as a threat to established power structures and profit models. Some colleagues who previously ignored her when she cleaned their laboratories now perform exaggerated deference that barely masks underlying resentment. Others have embraced the organizational shift with genuine commitment to reformed research practices. Dr. Aisha Washington has joined the division as research director, bringing valuable experience from her community health center work. Together, they've established protocols ensuring clinical trials include diverse participant groups representative of actual patient populations with genetic variations properly accounted for in treatment development. Richard Davenport fully recovered from the poisoning, though still addressing some lingering neurological effects, has stepped back from daily operations to focus on structural governance reforms. His near-death experience and Maya's ethical choice to save him, despite their history, catalyzed profound personal reflection about the company he built and the values it embodies. The Dr. Harrison James Memorial Research Center now operates as a semi-independent entity within the corporate structure, with dedicated funding and oversight mechanisms specifically designed to prevent future suppression of research benefiting minority populations. Loretta James serves on the Oversight Board, alongside community health advocates, ensuring accountability to the populations the research ultimately serves. Maya reviews preliminary results from revived clinical trials of treatments originally developed by Dr. James before being shelved. The data confirms what he had documented years earlier, showing exceptional efficacy for conditions affecting patients with specific genetic markers common in Black and brown populations. Had these treatments reached market when originally developed, countless lives might have been saved or improved. The knowledge weighs heavily on Maya despite current progress. The criminal cases against those directly involved in the poisoning conspiracy have concluded with convictions for Bradley Wells and Dr. Parry. Elizabeth Chambers, along with several executives implicated in the broader research suppression scheme. Financial investigations revealed elaborate networks designed to profit from selective research suppression, with particular focus on treatments that might compete with more profitable existing drugs or expose the company to liability for inadequate diversity in previous clinical trials. Beyond criminal proceedings, civil lawsuits have been filed by researchers whose work was stolen or suppressed, with Maya's detailed documentation providing crucial evidence of systematic discrimination. These cases represent potential precedents for addressing intellectual theft, targeting minority researchers throughout the pharmaceutical industry. For Maya personally, the transition from institutional invisibility to public recognition has created complex challenges. Media attention, initially focused on the dramatic poisoning narrative, has evolved into deeper examination of structural inequities in medical research. Maya's articulate analysis of these issues has made her a sought-after speaker and advocate roles that pull her away from the direct research she values most. She faces the dilemma familiar to many, from marginalized communities who achieve positions of influence, balancing institutional reform work against the expectation that she alone must represent broader diversity concerns. Today marks a significant milestone as she prepares to address medical students at her former university, now home to a scholarship program for underrepresented minorities in scientific research. The program, funded through settlement money from civil cases against Davenport Technologies, provides not just financial support, but mentorship and research opportunities, specifically designed to address barriers Maya herself encountered. Before leaving for the lecture, Maya reviews one final document on her desk, a comprehensive report documenting patterns of research suppression across the pharmaceutical industry. The evidence suggests practices at Davenport Technologies, while egregious, were not unique but rather reflective of widespread industry approaches to research prioritization and development. The report will be submitted to regulatory agencies next week, potentially triggering industry-wide investigations and reforms. Maya's lecture to medical students draws from her extraordinary journey while focusing on systemic rather than personal narratives. She speaks about persistence against institutional barriers, the life-saving importance of diverse perspectives in medical research, and the ethical obligations that transcend personal interests or grievances. Medicine at its core is about seeing what others miss, she tells the audience of future physicians and researchers. Sometimes that means recognizing symptoms others have overlooked. Sometimes it means identifying patterns of exclusion that prevent certain communities from benefiting from medical advancement. Always it requires questioning assumptions about whose health matters and whose knowledge counts as expertise. Following the lecture, Maya meets with scholarship recipients, recognizing in their determined expressions the same combination of brilliance and resilience that defined her own academic journey. Their questions reflect awareness of both expanded opportunities and persistent barriers, pragmatic considerations about navigating systems still resistant to their full participation. Maya offers guidance without platitudes, acknowledging continued challenges while emphasizing expanded possibilities for meaningful impact. Returning to her office that evening, Maya finds a handwritten note from Davenport placed on her desk, evidently delivered during her absence. The message acknowledges their complicated history while looking toward future possibilities. Our company's greatest failure wasn't the poisoning attempt, but the years of brilliant minds we silenced through discrimination. Some toxins kill quickly, others destroy slowly by remaining invisible. Thank you for making both visible. The treatments you've revived will save countless lives, but perhaps the most important cure you've developed is for institutional blindness to talent that doesn't fit predetermined patterns. Maya places the note in her desk drawer rather than displaying it, appreciative of the sentiment, but aware that true change requires systemic transformation rather than individual recognition. She turns her attention to research proposals submitted by a diverse team of scientists addressing sickle cell treatments, their innovative approaches, building on Dr. James's foundational work while incorporating perspectives shaped by their own varied backgrounds and experiences. The future remains uncertain. Institutional reform always vulnerable to regression without constant vigilance. But tonight, reviewing research that might never have seen development without her intervention, Maya allows herself to recognize the tangible impact of perseverance against seemingly insurmountable barriers. The brilliant mind once relegated to cleaning floors now directs resources towards saving lives in communities historically underserved by medical advancement, rewriting not just her own future, but potentially the future of healthcare delivery itself. Have you ever witnessed someone's brilliance being overlooked simply because of who they are rather than what they know? Drop a comment sharing how we might better recognize talent regardless of packaging. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more narratives that challenge us to see beyond appearances to the capabilities within. Share with someone who deserves recognition for their overlooked contributions. Remember, the most dangerous form of invisibility isn't physical absence, but systematic blindness to presence and potential that doesn't match our expectations. Thank you for joining me for this journey, and may we all develop the vision to see what truly matters. The story of Dr. Maya Jefferson illuminates how brilliance can be deliberately rendered invisible by systems designed to value credentials only when they come in expected packages. Maya's journey reveals that discrimination in professional settings doesn't just harm individuals, it endangers lives by silencing crucial perspectives and burying life-saving innovations. When institutions prioritize power and profit over truth, everyone loses, particularly those from communities already underserved by medical research. Maya teaches us that true expertise persists despite demotion, that ethical commitments transcend personal grievances, and that seeing what others miss often requires looking where others refuse to see. Her story demonstrates how knowledge dismissed as unscientific when coming from traditional or indigenous sources often contains valuable insights that conventional approaches overlook. Perhaps most importantly, Maya's experience shows that change requires both individual courage and structural reform. One person speaking truth to power can create momentary disruption, but lasting transformation demands dismantling systems that routinely discount certain voices while amplifying others. The most dangerous form of invisibility isn't physical absence, but systematic blindness to presence and potential that doesn't fit predetermined expectations. By recognizing brilliance wherever it exists, we expand our collective capacity to solve problems that affect us all. Has someone ever dismissed your knowledge or expertise based on your appearance rather than your abilities? Share your experience in the comments below. Have you witnessed brilliant contributions being overlooked in your workplace or community? I'd love to hear how you've navigated similar situations or supported others facing institutional barriers. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help it reach others who might see themselves in Maya's journey. Subscribe to our channel for more narratives that spotlight overlooked heroes and challenge us to recognize talent in unexpected places. Share this video with someone who deserves recognition for their contributions, or with organizations that need to examine their own blind spots. Together, we can create systems that value brilliance in all its forms. Thank you for joining this journey through invisible brilliance. May we all develop the courage to speak up when we see injustice and the wisdom to listen when voices different from our own offer solutions we might otherwise miss.